Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome to part 1 of my How to Land Your First Job guide. Now, before we dive in, this video is all about getting corporate ready. So I figured let's make a quick change in style to set the mood. Gotta look the part, right? So, there we go. Now we are ready to talk about landing that first job like we own it. You might be looking at the screen and wondering, what does this person even know about landing a job? I'll tell you. I've been right where you are, looking into a blank Word document, feeling overwhelmed and wondering how the heck do I even start? Feeling pressure to stand out in the job market, and that was not easy. So, in fact, it took me a lot longer than I wanted it to. And I had to learn how to tweak my CV, learn about ATS, which we will get into in this video, and get from a rejection to rejection until I was able to get my foot into the door in the most competitive, or one of the most competitive job markets in the world, in Dubai. Through it all, I have learned a ton, and I'm here to share with you what I learned from it, what worked and what didn't, so you don't have to go into that struggle as much. Hi and welcome back to So Why Wait. If you're new here, my name is Dana, and in this channel we talk about life as a Gen Z and what I wish somebody had told me when I was younger. Today's video will be the first part of how to land your first job guide. Make sure to subscribe so that you'll get notified for the other videos that are going to come up regarding this topic. Before we dive right in, just let me share with you that this video will also have timestamps. I realized in the previous video some users were able to use timestamps and others weren't able to, so I made sure to include the timestamps in the description box below so that you'll be able to navigate to the part of the video that you care about most if the timestamps aren't showing above your play bar. So with that being out of the way, let's dive right in and get that CV ready. Okay, first things first, why does the CV matter? Let me try to put it in terms that our generation will be able to get that sort of familiarity with the concept that we don't seem to be fond of. Because why do we need a CV if we are still at school or we're just a fresh graduate? What on earth do we have to put on that blank page? But let us think about it in this way. If you want to meet someone online, your go-to would be to look at their bio and on their socials. So this would be what would build your first impression on that person, to know if this person is your cup of tea or coffee for that matters, or they don't even fill your cup to begin with. This is exactly how the CV would look like in a corporate world. So this is the first impression that a potential employer will have the chance to look at when they need to fill a job vacancy. So you have about 6 seconds to do so until they move on to the next CV. No pressure, right? Alright, now let's break down the structure of your CV. Think about it as building a house. We will need to set out the right foundation first, and then we can think about the decorations later. So here are our major 6 pillars. First part is the header. So this is your name, your contact info, mobile number and email, and a link to your LinkedIn profile. This will be discussed in details in part 2 of this guide, so don't worry about that. Alternatively, also you can put your website or portfolio if available in case you're a creative. So in this section, you'll have to keep it simple. This is just to make sure that the recruiter or the hiring manager knows how to reach out to you ASAP. So just a pro tip on this one, make sure that your email is professional, meaning that it is clear and showing your name. If your email is partygirl123@gmail.com, love your party spirit, but let's keep it off CV territory. We'll need to make sure that if you're rocking a goofy email still, maybe it is time to change that. Being 27, back in my days, we had used Hotmail more than Gmail, and the availability was all there because we were there around the time that Hotmail was created. However, for you, for using Gmail, it is most likely that you don't have this availability for your typical case scenario or ideal case scenario, which is first name dot last name at gmail.com. In case this is not available for you, an alternative would be abbreviations for your name and family name, however that is possible. Important thing is to keep it professional, because this is the first thing that and the most likely most used way to reach out for you from recruiters and hiring managers. Second part is your professional summary. So in this one, you will have to market yourself. You get to do that in 2 to 3 sentences. You don't have to make it so long. You just need to describe your passion, your key strengths, and what you're looking for in a job. Now, even if you don't have enough experience, it's totally normal. You're still a fresh graduate that is looking for work. So you can highlight the things that you're good at and what you're looking for. For example, along the line, you can say something like a recent graduate having a passion in marketing and social media, looking for a entry-level job in whatever role you may be interested in, to leverage my skills in content creation, for example, whatever may be the case for you. And this is like a part where you get to fill some sort of space in your CV, especially if you don't have much experience. It is kind of equivalent to your elevator pitch, if we can say so. So the third thing is skills. You'll have to mention both hard skills and soft skills. What's the difference? Hard skills are your teachable skills, the ones that you learn, the specific ones, your knowledge base. For example, coding, data analysis, graphic design, or whatever it may be. On the other hand, the soft skills, they are more on an interpersonal or communicational abilities. So for example, teamwork, empathy, problem solving, and the like. So the lists for these can be very long, and you can choose from those as long as they resonate with you. Even if you think that the skill is minor, if you're good at it, add it. It will count. And as a pro tip, whatever you lack in hard skills, replace with soft skills. Why? Because the dynamic of hiring from an employer or a hiring manager is kind of changing. In the past, hard skills were the most important, but recently, with all the updates and technology that we have been experiencing, they have been counting more or looking more for the personality of the person, how they present themselves, how do they hold communication. They care about, for example, seeing you as a person that they would work with day in, day out in the environment of the company that you're applying for. So don't be so hard on yourself. If you don't have a lot of hard skills in your bag, you'll get to know that they know that you will learn that. Part four, which I think is something that we all struggle in when trying to have our CV uh, written, experience. So even if you don't have that type of traditional experience, meaning you didn't work in anything before, I know for people sometimes if you are in college, you might be working something on the line and you can use that. But in my case, when I graduated, I didn't have any sort of experience in the working place to add. I didn't do any volunteer work, anything. It was completely blank. So you can also with that fill in your experience in some sort of things you were involved in while you were in your school or college years, just to show that you can be an active person and you can contribute somewhere. So for example, you can type in some sort of uh, projects that you worked on, the way that you talk about it is trying to highlight your soft skills, your involvement in such projects. Uh, you were, for example, a leader, a team worker, you had some sort of contribution to the project itself to make it look on a higher level. You can also add in volunteer work. It would be very important if you had done any of this. And also you can put in internships. So for internships, even if you didn't do those while you're still in university, if your curriculum or your courses didn't include an internship somewhere as a course, you can do that after you graduate or while still learning if you had the time. And you can add that on the CV. It will highlight newly newly acquired skills from that internship, even if it wasn't directly linked to the job that you're applying to, as long as it highlights soft skills that will be used in the job that you're applying for, it will be accounted or taken into consideration. But please, whatever you do, do not lie on your CV. Be authentic, because lying on the CV or adding in things that you actually have no clue of is going to bite you in somewhere you won't like. So to try to avoid this, you can tailor the things that you already know or that you have experience in a more refined way, and an advanced, polished way to make it sound like it is something more important than it actually was. But this way, you know how to back yourself up in case of any questions were asked. For example, adding in a being a Spanish teacher is believable, but answering sí, claro, with confidence when being asked de dónde eres is a solid adios, amiga. That's the way it is. Next would be education. So in this one, you'll have to add your major or degree, your university, and any other relevant courses or projects you worked on. If your GPA was a high one, you can add it on your CV to make it more credible. However, be very, very careful because sometimes this could be a negative thing rather than it being positive. What I mean by that is check for your university grading or marking scheme. For example, the university that I was in, it had a system where the grading is a bit different. So A's and B's were something not to be even within our reach. Even if the student was top notch, if they had like 75 or 80%, if the professor had like a really great mood that day, it would be an achievement. So even if in your university getting, for example, like a 75% or approximate numbers um, would be a great achievement, it wouldn't sound the same for your employer because they don't actually know what grading system your university used, and trust me, they wouldn't even bother to check that. So for example, if you have the same case as I did, you don't need to include numbers. uh, what you can do instead is that if you actually were a top student, you can add, for example, distinction or with honors or something like that beside your degree. This way you will show the person that you were actually a top-notch student, and give yourself a chance. If they want to ask about this, you will be able to explain why you didn't put the numbers, for example, the specific ones. um, this will be like a leverage for you, for people to know what is your caliber. But on the other hand, even if your grades weren't that great, for real, it doesn't matter. Some companies, they worry about this if they're one of the top companies and they check this, but most other companies, they don't really care about the transcripts because they would think that this was a stage that you passed in just to get that formal document, that certificate that you finished your major. Your experience or your efficiency in work would come later, and it doesn't have to do anything with the marks that you got in university. So our last part would be additional section. This is the section where you will be able to tailor your CV or personalize your CV. So if you've done any volunteer work that you didn't mention in the experience section, but it is of worth or meaning, for example, if you have certificates or for things you've attended, you speak multiple languages, or you have a hobby that is relevant to the job that you're applying to, this is the section that you can use to add those. Now, this section is can be separate, or it can be meshed with the other sections that we've discussed before. So, for example, if you don't want to let the languages, for example, sit alone in a section, you can use them to put them in skills. But again, since your CV is still fresh, you will need to fill some spaces out. So it is kind of a hack to do it separately. Okay, let's talk about something that is a bit more techy, but it is really important: ATS. So ATS is an abbreviation for Applicant Tracking System, and basically it is the software that most companies use for sifting through hundreds and even thousands of CVs, depending on the size of the company. So it is not a human being that is first receiving and reading your CV, it is a robot-like system. So if your CV is not formatted in the right way and has the correct keywords, your CV might be disregarded by ATS because it can't read it. So how to make a CV ATS friendly? Here are some tips. So first, keep it simple. Use a clean, straightforward design. No fancy, crazy fonts that might not be readable by this system. Use fonts that are very common, for example, Calibri, Arial, or Times New Roman. I have no clue if I said any of this, pronounced any of this correctly, but you know which fonts I'm talking about. Why do I mention this? So, of course, we want to impress people when we're first creating our CV. We want to make an impact. But since the times have been changing, previously, years ago, uh, your CV really wanted to catch the person's eye because you used to have your CV done and you used to go physically to different companies holding like a big folder having many copies of your CV, and then once you go to one company, you give them your CV. You want it to look visually attractive, visually inviting. So that was the time where we would understand definitely that the design of the CV is something that would make it stand out. But since that incorporation of the ATS system was included, it is no longer something that is a like an advantage or a pushing factor. It's kind of something that will diminish your options or your chances in having your CV actually being perceived by the company that you're applying to. So, for that being the case, try as much as possible to keep the CV simple so that you make sure that it is readable by the system, so that you would raise your chances of the CV actually crossing through to your hiring manager. Use keywords. So ATS is smart, but it is looking for specific keywords from the job description in your CV. So make sure, for example, when you're applying for something, to have your CV including those sentences. For example, if you're applying for, let's say, social media manager, okay, if this is something that is required as a skill, social media management should be in your CV so that it would make the ATS catch it directly and increase your percentage of passing through the next stage. But try to keep it natural or neutral. Don't overdo it. You don't want your CV to look sus. Third thing, stick to standard section titles. So remember when I said it is smart, kind of disregard that in this part, because you have to go for words that are easily looked for. For example, if you wrote something along the line of what I've done or my experience, it might be overlooked. So use the standard plain, if you want to say it, titles. So don't go overboard with these. Use work experience, skills, education. Just that. This way ATS knows where to find these and check what is the information that is written underneath them. Fourth thing is to save your CV in PDF file or Word document format. And the reason for that is because ATS system has like a kind of difficulty reading other formats. And another tip would be, try to always save it or to keep it saved on your system or on your computer as a Word file, because you will have it more accessible when you want to tailor your CV depending on the job title or the job description that you're applying for. So when you have it in PDF, it's a more non-editable version. But you need a version to be easily changed. The Word document will be the perfect solution for you. Now, a few things to avoid while writing a CV. First is try avoiding cliches. For example, try not to use the term hardworking or team player, for example. Hardworking is a topic for another time because it is something that would bait you into working way more than your job experience or job description requires you to. And you can try to highlight this or your team player spirit in your experience section. For example, instead of saying those two words in your skill, you can incorporate that in your experience section. For example, led a project that increased satisfaction by 15%. It's more impactful this way. So it is true that you do have these skills, but they are very much used, and sometimes it makes the CV look like it's very generic, like there is no person behind that CV. So this type of trying to put some more experience into the word than actually just putting it as it is makes more impact while studying your CV. The second thing is try to avoid irrelevant details. We discussed this before a bit earlier in this video. So when you want to mention something that you have experience in, or when you're mentioning your hobbies, you don't want to mention something that is totally irrelevant to the job that you're applying to. For example, if you worked in the cafeteria at college and you're applying for a tech job, there is no set of skills that are actually going to mesh well between each other that would make the employer say, interesting. However, you can definitely mention that, and it would be a plus for you if you're applying for something for QA or customer experience or customer service field or area, because this would say that you have the skills or you have an idea of what it takes to be providing like services to a client. The third one is something that we also touched based on this word. It is also very much used in a corporate world. You'll hear that a lot, so I'm trying to prepare you. We talked about this a bit earlier, is over the top design. This is something that we have to avoid at all costs to make sure that our CV is readable by ATS system or whatever other system that a company might have in place, to make sure that our CV makes it through to the next stage. Okay, now that we had our fundamentals clear and we covered the basics, we can now go on to the formatting stage, or kind of the designing of our house as we started the video. So keep in mind those following tips. Bullet points. Your friend, your go-to, your lifetime partner, all of these. In a CV, bullet points are so important. It makes it much more easy to read. It makes it softer on the eyes, and it kind of pushes you to keep your sentences short and concise. White space. It is really important as well, because you don't want your CV to look very crammed and crowded in information. Just as you would look at any document, and if you feel that there is too much words in it, you will just skip it. Hiring managers are not any different. So make sure that it is inviting. When you have like some white spaces within your CV, it makes it easier for the person to go through the bullet points that you've mentioned. Okay, so formatting wise as well, whenever you're trying to start with a new section in your CV, make sure to make that in bold to make it stand out. Last thing is keep your CV one page. The only time where it is kind of acceptable to have more than one page CV is when you have 10 plus years of experience. While you're a Gen Z, I believe this would be a very rare case, so let's try to stick to one page only. It would be more than enough. Lastly, we're going to talk about personalization. We should try as much as possible to make our CV personalized to the job that we are applying to. I totally get that it will have a lot much work to do, a lot much time consuming when you're trying to apply for many jobs and you're having to tailor your CV to the job that you're applying to. But tweaking those experiences, the skills, and the professional summary is going to be the whole difference that it takes and the whole leverage that you need to make a difference between the generic CV and between your CV screaming out, I'm the perfect fit for the job. And that's part one of our guide. Writing your CV is that first step for landing your job, and now you have the tools to make it stand out. If you feel like you need more assistance in writing or drafting your CV, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram. I'm here to help. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe so that you'll be able to see when part 2 is out. And part 2 will be talking about LinkedIn profile, whatever you need to know about this platform and why everybody is always talking about it. And until next time, keep on hustling and good luck with your CV.